All right. How do I look? Like a man in a laundry room. Great. Seems fine. Okay. Move this over here. Send it to live on Facebook. Okay. All right. Showtime, let's do it. Hello. Welcome to this week's Candid Shop Talk. I'm Dave from Candid Wholesale, here in the Candid Wholesale community. And today we're going to be doing our monthly listener mailbag for the month of June 2020, which has passed. We're in July now, but what better time to do a recap of a month than after it's over. So yeah, just to recap, this is a community of buyers, sellers, and showrooms who buy and sell wholesale. As such, we are, a unique business community in the sense that we have some very different concerns, I think, than the general business community, and specifically given the lead times and the in-person nature of a lot of our member companies. I think we just have some unique perspectives on things, and being a part of this community and being at the head of it, we're able to talk with you, kind of see trends that are happening. And the goal is every month or so to give a rundown on what's going on, which is especially important right now because a lot of the outlets for talking between each other and checking in are just not available to us because we're all in our homes in very, very isolation, trying to make sense of all this. So in as much as we have some perspectives to offer, I would like to offer them now. And here is a high-level anonymized data view of what we're seeing within our community, both as an app. We have an app, Candid Wholesale, which allows people to buy and sell wholesale. And we also have this community where some discussion happens. And we also just know people. So here's our take on current events as of early July 2020. June was the 4th calendar month of the pandemic, which seems crazy, but when you add it up, March, April, May, June, that's a lot of time. That's enough time for the initial sort of shock to die down somewhat. And while there's certainly it doesn't feel like we're any closer to the end, nor does anything feel particularly stable or fixed. However, people have tended to sort of figure out what it is that they're going to do. Nothing is for certain. Just because you're open in June doesn't mean you're going to be open in July. But I think for the most part, we have found that a lot of people have sort of figured out something that assuming nothing goes terribly sideways, is going to be able to get them through the rest of the year or the rest of the pandemic until it doesn't. The beginning of the month was very, very, there were a number of protests and a lot of media activity and just general awareness on social media and otherwise about Black Lives Matter, and the police response to everything was very much top of mind. And I think we saw a lot of companies, as I'm sure you did as well, weighing in, making public statements about, essentially articulating their side in things, muting when they didn't feel like they had anything useful to say. And overall, I think that hopefully some really good and lasting things are going to come out of that. But that was very much the first half of June. I think was taking up a lot of the airwaves, was just public response to Black Lives Matter. And we are actually, there's a lot to talk about. We have some upcoming programming that we're putting together on ethical business generally, and which I think I'm personally fascinated with, because I think a lot of our users here are in the small to medium business category, which means, in the neighborhood of 10 million a year or under in sales and revenue. And when you're running a business of that size, there's just a lot of stuff you can get wrong without realizing it. And I think we've certainly learned a lot, in general and in particular in this past month, about how you can feel like you're doing the right thing, but until you've put specific prior policies and programs in place, you're actually not really helping as much as you think you can. So I'm excited to continue learning more about that and share some of our knowledge with you as well. Moving on to the next big topic, which has sort of dominated the second half of the month, and certainly is top of mind for everybody coming into July, is reopening, which itself is kind of a problematic word because it implies a binary choice where I don't think there really is one. Nobody, we're all in this very strange gray area between open and closed. The good news is that at least as far as what we're seeing, the worst of our expectations haven't come to pass. The doom blade that wipes out everybody instantly, certainly it's made life hard. Certainly companies have gone out of business, but the overwhelming majority of the people in our network have figured out ways to stay open, albeit with drastically diminished or changed, modified business practices. But we're at the point in the pandemic right now where people are largely able to survive. And what that means, if you're in production, that means you're potentially staggering shifts, you're doing ordering online, you're offering contactless curbside or mail order pickup. If you're a retail establishment, it's much, much trickier. The biggest stresses there continue to just be rent and utilities. We're still in a relatively sweet spot where companies, or at least in June, companies who had applied for any of the SBA business grants were designed to be a lifeline that extended through June 30th. So companies that were able to access those funds were able to then use those in that timeline. And while it certainly wasn't normal or comfortable, stay in the game that way, even if they experienced a complete drop off in revenue. An interesting program too, I know in Oregon we've got, I believe it's called WorkShare, and I'm sure other states have something similar. Oftentimes, when there's enough money for 3 employees and you have 4, if you reduce everybody's hours, proportionally, you're able to keep 4 people on at reduced salaries. And state programs like WorkShare will step in and help make up the difference, which is certainly not ideal, but it's far, far better than nothing, and has allowed, you know, I know several companies that I've talked to where that has been the difference between having a full staff and not having a full staff. So again, looking retrospectively at June, that is the relatively happy ending there. Childcare, for those people who have that as a factor, remains an enormous concern. If you don't have childcare, you have children, and depending on their age, there's all sorts of pathologies that having constantly at home children will cause to your business. You know, companies, certain businesses where they could open their retail establishment are unable to because the principals need to stay home with their kids. And that's not nothing. I think we're all, I myself am a parent, and I think we're all waiting to see how that all shakes out. But that remains top of mind for people. You know, I think going into the summer, at least there's a seasonal association, at least with older kids, that summer's when school's out. So school's out and it's summer. You know, but looking ahead to fall, I think people are rightly concerned about what's going to happen then. In terms of order trends, again, not a happy story, but not as bad as we would have thought. I think order volume is down, but we've seen fewer cancellations across the system and across the board than we were expecting. I think a lot of people, rather than pulling out outright, again, a part of this is because we tend to have a community of largely personally, you know, companies who know each other. It's not faceless ordering from Amazon. These are networks and relationships that have been built up over years. So that really comes into play when a crisis like this happens, because everybody's trying to find a mutually beneficial solution. And in a lot of times, what that's turned into has been pressing pause wherever that's possible. So you'll see shipments, you know, going way down in the month of June, as they were with May, but not being canceled, being postponed, you know, split orders so that they're getting less right now because it's just a cascading effect. When people can't come into your store, you can't sell the products, which means you're ordering less of them, and you certainly don't want to be ordering what you thought you needed in February. But again, part of being in month 4 of this is that by now you're able to at least, you know, it's a much less delightful line to draw, but you can draw it, and you have a bit of a sense of where you're going to be next month, which is so much of wholesale is predicting demand and looking a few weeks or months ahead into the future. So that's that. And that is a good segue. It's worth noting that going into July, also things tend, you know, it varies sector by sector, but at least in apparel and home goods, which make up a lot of our network, there's a bit of a dip going into August, because August is traditionally where a lot of concentrated buying happens for the holiday markets. That is still, you know, today it's July 8th. We're probably 6 to 8 weeks out from that really happening, and the difference is really being felt. I think, you know, that's a whole other topic of conversation, but that's coming. So I think this is in a lot of ways the calm before the something. I'm not sure if it's going to be a storm, but there's a cyclical calmness that you need to account for, I think, when you're looking at order volumes. But again, it could be far, far worse. And then being at my expectations are at the floor, I was pleasantly surprised to see a relatively small number of cancellations in all the sources we were looking at, and mostly hearing the same story over and over again, which is we're in this for the long haul. You know, if I cancel my order, you're gone, you know, on a large enough scale. So how do we figure out a way to not make the buyer be subsidizing the seller entirely, but also making sure that the ecosystem stays healthy and enough blood is pumping through the system that there's going to be something left when we all wake up from this. Finally, as far as user and interest trends, I mean, I think we get through the app and through the community, we get a lot of feedback on what is actually on people's minds. In addition to everything we talked about above, you know, the biggest thing that everybody's looking for right now is new partners. And again, it's, you know, as an insurance policy, in case the ones you have, you know, as a seller, obviously you want more buyers. As a buyer, potentially you have brands that have gone out of business, or things have just changed. You know, what was selling last summer is not necessarily selling in this summer, whether it is because of social distancing, whether it's because of economic trends, for a variety of reasons. Everybody on every side of the transaction wants more new partners. And as such, there's a huge push for online discovery. You know, I mentioned the trade shows that are going to be happening or not happening in August. We at Candid are working on a virtual trade show right now that we can't really talk about yet, but we will be talking about it very soon. I know a lot of other players in the field are, because the point being that Christmas and holiday buying happens. And I think however further we go into the pit of COVID-19, the holidays are the holidays, and the time to make those plans to get products in store is coming up on us very soon. So I think a lot of people are preparing for that. And finally, just new approaches. Everybody's looking for a new way to fill their days and reach out to people when the physical ways have been denied them. So, a lot of people are getting more active and differently active on social media, branching out to new channels that they haven't before, and taking on new approaches. Content marketing is a blanket term for writing stuff and filming stuff and putting stuff out there on the internet, and I'm seeing a lot more brands and retailers get into that, just because it's the next best thing. I think when everybody's stuck at home staring at their screens, that is the best way to get out in front of people without physically getting out in front of people. So, long story short, that's the report for June. If you have any other questions, or if there's anything you disagree with, please do chime in the comments. We took a bit of a break from these, but we're getting back with these weekly Candid Shop Talks. So please stay tuned. As always, we're here as a resource. We really have a unique bird's eye view on a lot of this stuff, and would love to help you if you have any questions or any issues about anything that you think we might be in a position to help out with. Please don't be a stranger. Thanks again for watching. I'm Dave. This has been your Candid Shop Talk for the week of July 8th. Take care.